Hey, Pepin.
Yo, yo.
We've been talking about Death Note a lot lately. I think we should do so again, clean up a little bit off of the last episode, and jump into some of the more lighthearted, funny stuff. I have a lot of things that I want to talk about with that. You down?
So wait. So we're going to talk about the lighter side?
Oh, we need to talk. Welcome back. So glad you could join us for another discussion about my favorite show of all time, Death Note. I'm sitting here once again with Pepin.
Yo, yo.
And my brother's back to talk about Death Note a little bit more. Welcome back, Nick. How are you?
Pretty good.
Definitely glad to have you. I'm, of course, Meader, and this is We Need to Talk. So glad you're here, I'm here, and Death Note is a thing, because I really like that show.
Yeah, I think we all like it.
Not as much as me. I like it the most of anybody.
Yeah, mister, I'm going to watch it in 3 days.
17 times. Okay, so I want to start. I know last time we talked about the ending. And from what I understand, there are some small differences between the ending of the show and the ending of the manga, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that. You've read the manga, Nick.
Yeah, I have. So basically, it's pretty much the same ending. The only differences that I noticed were when Light is calling out to all of his pawns and all of his quote-unquote friends, he, in the manga, also then asks Ryuk to help him and to write everybody's name except for his in the Death Note. But Ryuk refuses and says that it's just over, and he just needs to accept that it's over now. And also, the other difference is that Mikami doesn't die in the warehouse, then he actually gets put in jail and commits suicide later.
How does he kill himself later? Because I thought Harry Carey was like a brilliant way to end that, like killed by the pen that he was writing everybody else's name with. That was so symbolic.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure. I think it's something similar. I don't really remember, to be honest.
I think something interesting there is that he would have Ryuk try to kill all these people. And that kind of confuses me a little bit because Light was very aware that Ryuk was not on anybody's side there.
Ryuk pretended... Okay, we're going to get into a fucking Ryuk conversation like this, so screw this lighthearted one. We're saving that for the next time. Ryuk was in no... Ryuk was in no way... Ryuk pretended that he was not on Light's side. Light would have lost, like, in the first 3 or 4 episodes had it not been for Ryuk. Like, Light would not have survived a single month without Ryuk.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think I've said that since the first time I watched it, that I think that Ryuk plays a way bigger part in Light's success than Light's just, like, genius to begin with. Like, just the fact that Ryuk even put rules to begin with in the notebook, like, that alone allowed him to manipulate the notebook and figure out different ways to use it. And specifically, one of the biggest parts that always sticks out to me is when Light is confronted with Misora, the female, like, ex-FBI agent that's Ray Penber's fiance. And when she gives Light the false name originally, Ryuk laughs. And that is the main reason why Light even suspects it to be false in the begin with. Like, if Ryuk hadn't laughed at her saying her false name, then I don't know if Light would have come to the conclusion in time, because they were on their way back and he was on a short time frame that he needed to kill her. So
he even says towards the very end of that scene, like, oh, and Ryuk was laughing. He's laughed every time she's brought her name up. Now I'm sure that she gave me a fake name, and that's what led him to go back and actually get her real name.
Though, is this intentional on Ryuk's part? Because as far as I understand his character, he doesn't really care. He just finds it all entertaining, and he'll do something for entertainment if he wants to.
He finds it entertaining, and he does small little things to help Light out to keep the game going because he knows that the game can reach this pinnacle point and it's nowhere near it. And he absolutely needs Ryuk's help in order to continue on this game.
So it's not so much about being on his side, but more on the side of entertainment and wanting to continue. Like, it's the same end in a way, because he wants it to continue on, but not because he agrees with Light morally, just because he finds it interesting and exciting, because it is, honestly.
That was the whole point of him dropping the notebook in the first place.
Right.
And he tells, in the first episode, he tells Light, like, it just happened to fall near you, and then, like, why are you being so conceited, thinking that, like, you're the one that I chose? And then Light's like, no, that's not. Like, Light calls his bluff. And then Ryuk's like, well, the truth is I've been bored. So, like, Ryuk basically says, like, I chose you to be the one because Ryuk saw the potential. And I think Ryuk saw a lot of himself in Light. And then the other great example that of Ryuk really helping Light is when he says there's somebody following.
That was going to bring up too. And it's interesting that he tells him that because it's the exact moment that he tells him, oh, like, I'm not on your side. Like, this isn't why I'm telling you this. It's only because I'm getting creeped out, blah, blah, blah. But I would say that that's bullshit anyways, because, like, why would he be getting creeped out about being, like, looked at or whatever? Or, like, because he can't be seen, obviously. And also, like, they can't do anything to him, so why would he care?
Well, I'd still be pretty creeped out as well. I mean, if I was in Ryuk's position there. And I would say he's more aiding than he is helping. Like, I think the distinction I would make.
Isn't that a synonym? Aiding and helping?
You might be an aid to someone, but not, it's more like your job, or you're kind of doing it for different reasons. Like, he's being an aid. It is kind of like semantical. But his goal isn't necessarily to further Light's ends, but it's rather just to create something interesting. And, perhaps he's thinking in the back of his mind when that agent's following him, okay, this might give him an opportunity to kind of further his ends, because it'd be more interesting to see him deal with this agent and stuff. But I also think he's legitimately creeped out. And I think the whole part of, like, I'm just telling you this because I'm creeped out and going into explanation, I'm not there to help you out. It's just more to let the audience know that, Ryuk's not on his side. He's just kind of creeped out. It's sort of own personal reasons.
Ryuk wants the game to continue. Therefore, he is on Light's side. Because if Light dies, the game ends. The only time he stops being on Light's side is at the very, very end. So when Light gives up ownership of the notebook and, like, does all those switches around with the notebooks, like, Ryuk did not have to do any of that. He did that all. And then when he checks for all the cameras, like, he uses the excuse, oh, I want to be able to eat apples. Like, technically, he could go off and go eat apples anywhere. Like, he doesn't need to necessarily stick right where Light is, and he proves that countless times by not having the Shinigami necessarily right next to the person. He just lets that be an excuse for him to be able to help Light to check if there's cameras and bugs. And he constantly uses all these fake excuses to further Light's ends. Yes, it's for the reason of his own entertainment, and it's really for his own selfish reason, but regardless, without Ryuk's help, Light would not have ever succeeded to the point he did.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, there's a point later on where, I forget what it was exactly, like, Mel had the notebook or something, and then, like, Ryuk went flying somewhere to do something. It kind of seemed like he was, like, on, helping out. It's going a bit beyond normal Ryuk. Do you remember what I was talking about at all?
I think so. I think it's when Sido comes to the human world, the other Shinigami that was originally the owner of the DeathNote that Ryuk gave to Light. He comes after his DeathNote and begins to follow Ryuk because he knows Ryuk took it. And then Ryuk's like, I don't know where it is, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah, like, I think that's the moment you're talking about, because he's definitely flying by himself and Sido's following him. And I don't exactly remember where he's going.
He's going to some kind of place in, I think it's New Mexico or something, some place in America. And it's like an underground shelter.
Well, that's where Seto goes, yes. But I think Nick's saying he doesn't know where Ryuk is going. And that's at the point where Mikami has the notebook, and Ryuk is just disappeared. Because Ryuk is technically still following Light around.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, he's in the room with him when they have the notebook, and when Nier brings it up and asks, he's like, I'd like to talk to the Shinigami. But anyway, so that's why I think that Ryuk is on Light's side in a way. To a selfish means, yes, but still, without Ryuk, Light would not have gotten to where it was.
Right. That's definitely... I mean, ultimately, that's definitely true, because he dropped the notebook and he came in with, but... Yeah, there's so many points where Light would have just failed if it was not for Ryuk. And I kind of feel like he was holding on to some rules to himself, like not saying certain things, just to kind of tell him later, in a way, right? Just to, see how Light reacted.
Like... Definitely early on, where he holds on to, like, when someone touches the notebook, but he always tells him the rules before something bad happens, or to try and save him from a situation.
Yeah, I agree. He definitely does tell him at a convenient time for Light. But also, I'd like to say that I don't think Ryuk really knows how to use the notebook that well anyways. He just knows, like, basic rules, and that's about it. Like, he doesn't understand the manipulation rules, like, at all, I don't think. Like, how you can control people and stuff like that. Like, Light had to do all of that discovery by himself.
Yeah, well, I don't think Ryuk ever had the need to go to these extremes of, having to, like, fool people or having to exploit these rules. So it would make sense for him not to know that kind of, stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Like, a Shinigami in their regular role doesn't need to know that stuff. Like, they're just there to just kill people to keep on living. But I also think that there's a hierarchy in Shinigami world anyways of, like, more powerful Shinigamis, not by, like, their ability, but by knowledge. And so Ryuk could have learned those things if he wanted to and have a better grasp. But Shinigami are lazy, so...
On that point, there's a Shinigami god. Is that correct?
Yeah, king, yeah.
Or king. Shinigami king. Yeah, that'd be a little redundant. Shinigami god. Shinigami king. And... yeah, would you say he's just more knowledgeable about Death Notes and how to do all that kind of stuff?
I think that the Shinigami King actually has abilities that other Shinigami don't. I think he actually has the ability to punish and kill other Shinigami. I think he might be the only one that is capable of that. Because I know that there are rules that Shinigami have to follow and laws of their land. And if they break them, they can be killed, like Rem does when she breaks the rule.
Right, so you'd probably say that was the Shinigami god, or, sorry, king, killing her, maybe?
I don't know if that's necessarily true, or if that's just, like, some type of nature of theirs. Like, I don't know, honestly. But I'm fairly sure that he is the one that administers punishment and stuff like that, like, because they have laws.
Maybe he's the one who put those rules into power in the first place, because it's pretty clear he can assign death notes to people, because he reassigns Seto's death note to Ryuk.
I agree.
Which is kind of odd, because, okay, that's something I completely didn't understand, because first off, Seto is completely glossed over in the whole show. He's just like a plot device to get rid of the third notebook.
Yeah.
But when he goes down to Earth, he has to get them to touch the Death Note in order for them to see him. Why? Hadn't they already touched it?
I also found that part a little bit confusing, because, like, he goes there and they're all, like, handling the Death Note, especially the person that the owner of it is, like Jack Nalen or whatever his name is. And yeah, and they don't see him. And then I think Mello's actually holding the Death Note at the time, and he picks it up and puts it on top of Jack whatever's head, and then he sees him, and then they all have to touch it. I'm assuming that there's some type of thing that they don't mention in the show where the original owner, if they touch it and then someone else touches it, then it's like, you know what I mean? Like, if the Shinigami touches the notebook and then a human touches it as the original owner, I don't...
But Ryuk never touches Light's notebook. Maybe it's something more like...
He did touch it before he dropped it. And he was the
last...
Yeah,
but he dropped it from in the Shinigami world. He didn't, like, go down to Earth and set it there. He, like, aimed it.
Maybe. I mean, he could have been just flying in the air.
I guess in
But
theory.
I don't think so though, because then it shows him after Light already has it going to the Shinigami world.
Maybe
Or
it's
to the human world, sorry.
maybe it kind of resets when the Shinigami goes to Earth. That starts the ability to see the Shinigami once the notebook is touched by the original owner.
It's something just completely not touched on in the story or the
Yeah.
manga, honestly. Like, it's just kind of, that's what happens. Like, I don't really know why. It must be some type of rule having to do with him touching it before they did.
Yeah, I'm honestly pretty confused by this right now because it could just be a plot hole, to be honest. But we could always justify it with some kind of rule, like we're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's such a confusing and in-depth show that I've found plot holes before that aren't real. Like, I thought they were plot holes, and then I just like think about it, and I work it out and just realize it's not. Like, for a while I was really confused about how the Japanese police had a death note, and then how they had given a death note back to Sido to take back, and then how also Mikami or Misa at the time had it, and I was really confused for a while until I remembered, like, Rem died and dropped her death note, blah blah blah.
Yeah. There were
It
3
was
death
just-
notes
yeah.
when Rem died.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
And then
implies that the death note that that Nier has at the end
that's Misa's.
is, well, it's nobody's. Misa gave it
That was Mikami's.
to Mikami, and Mikami killed himself. So technically it would be long to Nier,
It is Nier's,
because Nier was the last one to touch it.
and he wrote his name in the death note.
Arguable, but regardless,
But yes,
he touched it. He was the last
it was
one
on
to-
his person when Mikami died.
right,
So
and
it's
that
his.
would transfer it over to him.
Yeah.
Which, if touching the death note allowed him to see Ryuk, wouldn't that mean that it was Ryuk's notebook?
True.
And wouldn't that mean that Ryuk now has to stay with Nier until the notebook is finished or he dies?
Then that's possibly like foreshadowing that the notebook gets destroyed. Then
Very-
and there, maybe.
Very good point.
Maybe Nier burns it then and there to stop any evidence of him having written in it coming out. That way no one else gets to look at it.
You're really on that.
I
I think
could
it's
see
real.
I could see Nier burning it. I mean, that's what I assume you would do.
I could too. So we mentioned the Shinigami world, and I had a theory about it, especially in relation to Light. So at one point when Ryuk is talking to Light, he says that he quote, even if you did write names, the other Shinigami, well, he says the others would just laugh at you for working too hard. So writing isn't extending your life only, it's work for them. So with that in mind, Light also says afterwards, you told me just now that the Shinigami world is slowly rotting, right? Well, when you return from this world, why not use what you've learned here to try and change it for the better? So I think that the Shinigami's original role was to do what Light is doing and punish those who are being bad. But they got lazy because they could live forever, and over time, they stopped caring about they didn't need to kill people anymore to extend their life, so they fell into things that were more fun, like gambling and sleeping and just like being overall lazy. So they fell out of their role of keeping justice and order, and then our world started going to shit. So Light saying, without necessarily even realizing it, I'm going to show you, and Ryuk says a couple times, like, you're already a better Shinigami than most any. So Light's saying, I'm going to show you what a Shinigami can do, like what their real power is and what they should really be using it for, and you can bring this back to your world and make your world something worth living for again. Give you guys' lives meaning.
Yeah, like that's an interesting theory, but at the same time, I don't understand how that what you're saying could affect how that could affect their world as like a thing. Like that's not the reason why the world is dying. It's the reason why they're lazy, but it wouldn't make sense for the reason why their physical world around them would be dying. Like them killing humans is giving them life, not their world.
Because they don't have purpose anymore and now they're lazy. All they do is sleep and gamble.
Yeah, but it's not implied that they did anything before that. Like they just killed humans. Like that's all their purpose is.
It's a metaphor.
Well, I think Steve's making a point here because I watched this episode the other day, trying to catch up a little bit, and it's the episode where, Light says to Ryuk, you can take this knowledge back to your world, like Steve was saying, and make it better. And I was expecting, Ryuk to be kind of like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense, like what? But he says, oh wow, you're quite the optimist. Like he doesn't have much of a reaction, and kind of like it's almost like he's kind of considering in his mind a little bit. Oh yeah, that could be a thing. And the question would be compared to what? Like I expect him to say like make it better. What do you mean? This is a wasteland where we just kind of gamble and shit. We don't do much here. But instead, he's just kind of like, huh, yeah. He doesn't agree with it, but he doesn't, he would correct him if that was the case. But it's almost like he could make it better in some kind of way. And the question would be, what kind of way? Your theory is that it would be kind of like, do we be providing justice in the world, right?
Yeah, giving purpose to their lives.
Giving purpose to their life by providing justice in the human world. And that could be a purpose there. I'm not sure if that would be the purpose, but definitely seems like there might be a motive or something to make better about the world. Ryuk's motivation is obviously to make something interesting because he doesn't really find gambling or doing all that kind of stuff very interesting. But he might actually see there being a higher purpose in his life. And what that is, I don't know. But it could be providing justice to the world, and maybe that's why he finds Kira so interesting, because that's what Kira is doing himself.
The other thing that I would mention with their world that I'm thinking about is, I mean, to back up your thing about they had a previous purpose and stuff like that, it's like, I guess that their world could have been different before they got lazy, like you're saying, and they just haven't kept up with their world, and that's why it's a wasteland now. Like, that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, and I'm saying that their world is a metaphor. Like, it's not like the world is a wasteland. Like, it's like Light and Ryuk in the first episode both say in tandem, this world is rotten, and they mean it in completely different ways. Like Light means like people are rotten, and Ryuk means the world literally is rotting.
Yeah.
So they're metaphors for each other.
I agree. I was just talking specifically about the Shinigami realm, and it's because the thing I noticed is that what they use to gamble and stuff like that, like they're using skulls and bones. How are there skulls and bones there? When they die, they turn to dust and rust. Like, they don't turn to skulls and bones, so why are there skulls and bones in the Shinigami realm? To me, that shows that there could have possibly been other creatures there originally, and if you're saying that they've gotten lazy and blah 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 over time, then maybe that's the remnants of what they used to have. They used to have livestock or something. I don't know.
And what happens to them when they die?
Who?
Shinigami.
They turn to this mixture of sand and rust. It's neither sand nor rust, but
what's their world made out of? What are their apples when Misa takes a bite?
Yeah, they're like sand.
She says it's like sand.
Yeah.
Like their whole world is dead Shinigami.
Except for the bones that are there that don't have a reason for being there.
Yeah, I'm going to interject my own theory here, which Nick was kind of getting at. We were talking about this earlier, and I think the Shinigami realm used to have like life in it. It used to be fully populated, and maybe they had livestock, maybe they had like whole palaces and towns and stuff. And I think they figured out how to extend their lives by having these death notes. And if you go off the knowledge theory, maybe they learn knowledge about how to do this stuff, and some people are more knowledgeable, some people are less knowledgeable, and they started going crazy with it because they didn't want to die, and they ended up killing everything in their world, which is why the world's so desolate. It's so terrible there, and all these people are afraid to die, hence why they killed the whole world there. And so they had to find another dimension, the human realm, and now they're just kind of taking off the human realm, and they don't really want to go there because it's, why? It's not their world, but that was a kind of rambling tangent at the end there.
You kind of like killed your own theory. Yeah. I'm sitting here and I'm like, wow, that's actually really brilliant. I didn't think about that. And then you just like,
the other
that was really brilliant, Nate. I really like that.
Remembering to stop working halfway through.
The other thing to do with their realm and the Shinigami in it that I would question is if there, not if, there is in this thing a king of the Shinigami, why has he stopped enforcing them to act how they're supposed to act? Like, if the world is getting so rotten there and stuff, why isn't the king taking leadership and like making people do what they need to do to keep it from being so rotten?
I argue the king would be in the same boat.
Lazy.
Yeah. He's the one, like, you know how in like vampire movies or Tuck Everlasting or whatever, you have people who live forever. They find it more to be a curse than anything, because after a while, there's no meaning. Without an expiration date, there's no meaning to life. I feel like they fell into that. And like Nate said, they're too scared to die, but they don't remember why they're living. So they're kind of just stuck in this void of like sleep and gamble. Like there's nothing else to do.
The other thing to do with skulls and stuff and possibly having livestock and stuff like that is Rem mentions that they don't even need to eat anyways. They've evolved to the point where their like organs and stuff like that don't even like they don't work. They're nothing. Like they don't need sustenance. They don't need anything besides to write names in the DeathNote to live. So why would there be livestock?
Well, at one point they did. At one point, imagine that it was like this normal world. And then I figured out the power to take the life from other things, take their life force and add it to my own. And therefore I didn't need to eat or drink or do anything because I was taking their life force, so there was no way I could die.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to die, so I had to keep taking life forces, keep taking them. And then other people had this power, were given this power as well, because I didn't want my friends or my family to die, so I gave you guys this power, and then you guys had to keep taking life forces. And over time, they killed everything. So in that sense, evolution took over, and because I lived so long, after I lived to the point where none of my insides were real anymore, because like the physical form of my body more or less disappeared. The only thing that was left was the bones, and really they look like dead. They look dead. The Shinigami, all of them.
That's actually what I was gonna say. Is I think that it could just be in the manga. I'm not sure. I can't fully remember, but at some point I remember Rem actually saying that she corrects herself because she says we've evolved to a point where we don't need our to eat sustenance because we don't have organs or whatever. But I think she corrects herself and says actually it's more like they've disintegrated. Like literally their organs have disintegrated and that's why they don't need to eat.
Well, you can imagine it like this. I mean, they have had their lives so extended they actually don't need to eat because their lives are like thousands of years, extended, right? And so are most of them gonna eat? And they've destroyed the world. What do they have to eat, right? So it's just kind of a natural kind of progression of not eating and, still being able to live.
Right. So they end up destroying their own world. And then, like you said, they need to look into another world. And then they're only really, it's like the human world to them is a cattle farm. It's just free life. Whenever you need it, you just take a little bit of life and then you just keep doing whatever in your own world. But what Light is teaching Ryuk is your life doesn't need, like, you guys have this amazing power. You can use it for a good purpose. You don't need to just use it for stealing life. Like, you have this amazing power. Use it to better yourselves. Use it to make your lives have meaning again.
Mm-hmm. And I think Ryuk would see that as like just have any kind of meaning, not even a good meaning, just kind of something there, which is Ryuk's trying to get at that with his own kind of motivation. It's anything, something that's not gambling or just kind of chatting about stupid shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Ryuk sees himself in Light, and that's the biggest motivation for Ryuk.
Yeah, the first couple episodes especially, we're trying to draw all these parallels between the two, and they're definitely very, very similar. I think the one difference, which we're definitely getting at here, is that Ryuk has no real purpose, while Light has extreme purpose. Other than that, they're both just looking for, something interesting, something to do, something, to make their lives more interesting.
Although, to be fair, when Light first gets the notebook, he says that nobody would believe that it was just a coincidence when he kills the first two people. So, like, he thinks that he's going to be caught, like, immediately. And then he says, would it make me a murderer? And, like, he's worried, like, about the moral implications on himself. And then immediately ignores his own question and embraces it and says, I'm the only one who can do this. I have to do this. And, like, turns to anger and says, the world is rotten. I have to do this. Could anybody else do this?
That's one part in the series that kind of confuses people a lot. I've showed this show to, like, maybe 2 or 3 people. And actually, it's like 4 people. 4 people. And they've always seen that little point where he just kind of flips. And it's kind of like, wow, that was quick, And I'm not sure if it makes sense. I think it does. I can't say why, though.
I think it's probably just to keep the plot going, honestly. Like, I don't really think a normal person, it would be that quick of a decision. Like I feel like it would take a lot more convincing themselves before they just agree to it. I think the reason why he just does it then and there is just to keep the plot moving of the story, honestly.
It's because of the Death Note. The Death Note changes Light. Because Light without the Death Note is L. With the Death Note, he's Kira. Light is 2 different people at once.
Kind of, but I don't really fully agree with that. Like, I think that it's the power definitely that changes him, but I still think he's the same person. Like,
so when Light loses the Death Note, what's the first thing he does? Is he
tries to catch
Kira. Yeah. He is L. And
I don't like how you say that, how he is L. I don't agree with that. They're 2 separate people, and they have 2 separate thought processes. They're not the same person.
If Light wasn't Kira, when L died, Light would have taken over and become L. Light actually surpasses L because he's the one who discovers that the Yotsuba group is using it, and he's the one who gives L meaning again in his life to be able to push forward and help catch Kira. If Light doesn't have the notebook, he is the world's greatest detective. Is that a better use for you than saying he's L?
Yes.
I also wouldn't feel comfortable with saying he's L exactly. He's very much similar to him. He's kind of very similar. There's no doubting that. But during that whole plot line where he lost his memory and was helping L, the whole detective stuff, they kept on alluding to, Light kind of having this gradual change. Instead of the slow change, instead of having the very quick change where he first had the Death Note, he started wondering, what would I do if I had this? Kira's obviously evil, but, if I had this power, would I use it for this reason?
Yeah, because Kira is a part of him. A part of him is Kira, but without the Death Note as the catalyst to push him, he strays towards good.
I agree, and that's why I disagree when you say that he has, like, 2 personalities, kind of like how you say it. Like, I think that he is himself, and he is generally good until he gets such power. Like, if he had the power in a different form other than the Death Note, I think the same exact thing would happen. I don't think it's necessarily the Death Note that is the reason why he is how he is. I think it's the power that comes with the Death Note.
I argue that he does have that power in his own brilliance, in his own deductive reasoning, and he uses it to try and catch Kira.
It's a completely separate power, like between killing people and just being smart. Like those are two different things.
He's the smartest kid his age.
What does that have to do with killing?
It doesn't. It's a different. You said if he had a different power, I feel like he would still use it.
I said if he had the same power from a different place, like.
So if he had the power to magically kill people, but it wasn't a notebook, it was a different piece of paper, like that.
Yeah, because
that's the same power.
Yeah, but you explicitly keep saying that the Death Note changes him. I don't think it's the Death Note. I think it's the power.
Okay, by the Death Note, I mean the power that the Death Note gives him.
Okay.
Well, to go on to like a similar train of thought here, I mean, Light was going to train to become a detective, like his father, and in a way, detective also has the power to kind of grant life or death over people, over convicts especially. So in a way, you could argue that his mindset was already in that kind of place in a way. He's not like a judge or anything, but, you know, he's looking after that same kind of path in a way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good point. I think that it's the deductive reasoning and powers and the game playing that he likes more than anything. And with the power to kill, he strays towards Kira, but without it, he strayed towards catching Kira.
Definitely.
So that's what I mean by he has these two warring personalities within him. Is he knows if I had this evil power, would I take the other side? Would I try and go against the way that I proceed now? What would I do with that power? And he doesn't like the thought of what he would do with that power, and he keeps trying to push it out of his head because he knows deep down that it is a part of him.
Okay, I'm going to introduce like a hypothetical here. So this is my own belief, so you might disagree with this. So I think, let's say that L just died of a heart attack, right? During the investigation when Light has lost his memory. And then let's say Light takes over. And then he eventually gets a hold of the Death Note. I mean, this is kind of contrived and stuff, but I think when Light got a hold of it, he would eventually become Kira again. You know, I think he would take hold of that Kira. Let's know whole plot aspects.
Hold
That's
on.
Like you want
to ignore the plot.
No, hold on a second. I didn't make that clear enough. So I think that if L got the Death Note, that he wouldn't become a Kira-like entity. I think he would get rid of it. He would prove it is, you know, a natural Death Note that does what it does, and that Kira is light and so on and so forth. But I don't think he would continue on using it. Now, in the other case, I think Light, if he were to rediscover the Death Note, and let's say he doesn't get his memory back or whatever, just for the sake of the argument, I think he would become Kira. So I think there's a difference here between Kira and L there.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Well, it's just because you keep saying Light is L, and I think he makes a really good point in saying that they're not the same because L would get rid of it and Light wouldn't.
I agree with that. I was trying to kind of summarize things and not have to say, like, go into super detail. When I said the notebook, I meant like the power that the notebook has and the way that it affects Light and the idea of being a god and the fact that it comes from a god and all of the things that are wrapped up in it. And that's why I just said the notebook, because I thought that would kind of wrap it up a little bit better. And then when I said L, I kind of meant, you know, the being able to chase after somebody like Kira and being able to work alongside his dad and being the world's greatest detective and using these insane deductive reasoning skills. And they draw so many parallels between L and Light, like both being amazing at tennis, both giving the speech and getting perfect scores on the tests, and all of these different things. By L, I don't mean literally he would be physically the same person with all of the same attributes. I just mean that he has the same general, they come to the same conclusions, and they have so many parallels that he is, in that sense, the same person.
Right.
I think that's a really, really good distinction that you made, though, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because I was getting a little confused there, because I thought, you know, obviously that you were saying that L would have been in the same position, he would have done the same things as Light. And, yeah. But as you're saying,
I thought it was I really liked the point where Light tells Ryuk that he's going to kill all the bad people, and then Ryuk says, "But then you'll be the only bad guy left." Like, that was amazing. And then Light just looks at him with that, like, really innocent look, and he's like, "I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm a hardworking honors student who's considered to be one of Japan's best and brightest, and I will become god of this new world." Like, one more thing that I wanted to bring up real quick is the whole scene with L on the roof, because I think that scene was amazingly done. It starts out with L standing up on the roof in the rain, and Light trying to call to him, being like, "What are you doing?" And then he makes him come over, and they stand in the rain and they talk. And he's like, "What are you doing out here?" And L says, "Don't you hear them? The church bells." He says, "Maybe a wedding or and then just like trails off, obviously implying funeral. And that's like amazing foreshadowing for him knowing he's about to die. And then that episode opens in the first place with Watari, with a young child standing in front of a church with the bells ringing and snow falling. I take that to imply that that's his parents' funeral, L's parents' funeral. Because every time snow falls, when what's the Naomi?
When Misora, when she's about to die.
When Naomi gets killed, she's the one who's Ray Penber's fiance. When L kills her, the second he touches her license, which is her giving over her name, you see a snowflake fall. Snow is always symbolic of death in this show. So when it's snowing and there's church bells, which he's already set up to imply that, or which is later set up to imply a funeral, and W is standing there, who runs the orphanage, with a young child who's crying, that's L. And it's L at his parents' funeral.
Yep.
I think when I saw that, I figured it was L. I didn't think about the parents' funeral thing, though.
Agreed. I think they make it fairly obvious that it's supposed to be L as a little kid in front of the orphanage, but the parents dying thing is something definitely that most people probably overlook, because I overlooked it. Like, I didn't think about that.
So that whole thing happens, and then he talks to Light about, have you ever told the truth in your life? And then Light lies. And then L says, I thought you might say something like that. And like he knew exactly what Light was going to say, and Light said it. And then they go back inside. And the next scene is them toweling off. And it's the extremely homoerotic scene where L starts wiping down Light's feet. And then Light's like, "What are you doing?" And Elle's like, "Oh, I just saw you wiping down, so I figured I'd help. I'm really good at foot massages." And then Light's like, and he says, "Please, it's the least I can do to atone for my sins." And then Light says, "Okay, that's fine." So Elle is treating Light like a god. Foot baths were a huge thing to do for like messiahs, like Jesus and stuff like that.
So I am going to disagree with here, because I've thought about this scene before, and it's obviously referencing the whole part in, was it Mark or something, the part of the Bible where Jesus goes to, I think it's Mary Magdalene, who is I think she's actually a whore. Or a prostitute.
Prostitute, yeah.
Sorry, I've been playing a lot of a game. So she's actually a prostitute, and he gets down and starts washing her feet, which doesn't make any sense according to customs, because number one, she'd be washing his feet since he was the guest. Number two, she's seen as unclean and everything. So it's kind of showing in the religion that God is there to serve you. And I think this is similar here. Not necessarily, L trying to serve as God, but he's trying to put him in the role of Jesus, saying, you think you're God, you're some kind of prostitute. You're kind of some kind of cheapskate, and I'm cleaning you. He's put himself in the position of Jesus, and it's kind of like a very kind of weird talking down to him. And that's how I saw it, at least.
I think Light sees it as, because L says it's the least I can do to atone for my sins. Light sees it as somebody serving him as a god. And that's more what I meant. I think that you raise a point that's like even way better than the point I was making.
The other thing is, immediately after that, in the same scene, I think that L actually says, like, we'll be parting ways soon.
He looks him dead in the eye and says, we'll be parting ways.
However, it's also implied that he's talking about the fact that his plan is to test the 13-day rule out, like, immediately after this. He's telling everybody, and that'll prove that Light is Kira, so therefore they'd be parting ways anyways because Kira's about to get caught. But I agree that it's probably most likely L knowing that he was going to die soon because he was so close to catching Light.
That's exactly the way I feel, because L is saying, we'll be parting ways soon. He knows that the conclusion is coming because he's testing the 13-day rule.
It goes either way, yeah.
So he's saying one way or the other, we're parting. Either you're going to be innocent or you're going to be guilty. Either way, we're not going to have a reason to see each other anymore. But he knows that Light is Kira. He knows it. Like, it's obvious. But the only reason that he won't just arrest him or kill him or whatever is because that's not how they play the game.
It's not proof.
And that's not proof. And without proof, he's not going to end the game. So he knows Light will not let this happen. Light is going to kill him. He knows he's going to die. And that's why he's standing in the rain. That's why he hears the bells. And that's why he looks him in the eye and says, we will be parting ways soon.
The other thing about the rain that I had thought of originally watching the show is, yes, it's symbolism, but I think that L also used the rain and made Light come out on the roof with him on purpose. And I think it's possible that maybe he did that because in the rain, he would have seen if there was a Shinigami. The rain would have hit against the Shinigami, and he could have then known, okay, he's definitely Kira, there's a Shinigami following him. It's possible that wouldn't have worked. Like, it's possible that the Shinigami could have, like, had the rain phase through it or whatever, but that was something that I thought of when I first watched it, was that it's possible that he was using the rain to show if there was an invisible being with him.
I didn't even consider that.
Yeah, it's possible. It could also just be a metaphor for being washed clean. Also, just real quick, to draw an analogy or a parallel between... Because we keep drawing parallels between Ryuk and Light, but there's also a parallel between Ryuk and L, in the sense that, as you're saying, L is just in it for the game, and he just wants entertainment in a way, right? And he's kind of aware he's facing his own death potentially in this instance, right? And he seems kind of fine with it in a way, because it's just like, this is interesting, this is fun. And, it's not like he doesn't want to catch Light, or Kira, rather, but he does seem to really enjoy playing this game. The only time he gets really freaked out is when he realizes, oh shit, Shinigami are real.
Well, when he realizes that they're real, he doesn't freak out at all. He's just kind of like,
so they do exist.
So they do exist. But yeah, you're talking about when he falls out of his chair, when
the first mentioning,
when second Kira says, we'll show our Shinigami to each other, and just the idea of it is like huge to him. But over time, it just like, it gets brought up so much that he actually believes it. By the time he sees it, he's like, oh shit, it does exist.
Yeah, I don't see that as being it's a very rational position for him to take as well, because he strikes me as like a kind of extreme kind of atheist, doesn't believe in ghosts, doesn't believe in supernatural things at all. And, there's this weird supernatural thing he's already proven to exist. And it being something like Shinigami or something, okay, whatever, that makes sense. Okay, I can see him buying that.
I think the other interesting thing about that is how Nier took realizing that there was Shinigami. He just took it as a matter of fact. He's just like, oh, well, then they exist. Okay, like he doesn't even like think about it. He's like, when Mello tells him, like people are like, wait, wouldn't that be a lie? Blah blah blah. And he's like, no, he wouldn't say a lie like that anyways. And so they exist.
As far as the show goes, strictly from a writing standpoint, Nier is the extension of L. So anything that was established with L is immediately accepted by Nier because he's like the continuation of L.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't take, a huge leap for Nier to be like, okay, so light is Kira, or Shinigami exists. That's something that was already established, so it's just accepted by him.
Right. True.
We really glossed over M. He's a whole nother character we'll have to talk about at some point, because Mello is crazy. We didn't talk about so many things that I want to talk about. But I think that next episode, we teased it this episode, and then I fucked you guys over, and you know what? This episode was awesome, so I don't care. You're gonna like it. You're gonna love the next episode, too, because we're gonna talk about really funny things that we saw that happen, and we're just gonna kind of have a good time about it. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up about any of the things that we covered in this episode before we call it quits and move on to more lighthearted things? Don't make a light joke.
I was going to say that Yagami backwards is I am gay.
No, it's not, because MI would be the last two letters. That'd be I am. Like,
I'm a gay.
Oh, I'm a gay, maybe, yes. Yeah.
Wow, you just broke my brain.
I'm a gay.
And that was We Need to Talk. If you want to hear more, well, we're at Twitter at WNDT1. Also, we're on Facebook at We Need to Talk Show. Give us a rating on iTunes. We're on Patreon. You can give us some donation money stuff. It's like a church, but even better because our savior is white, or maybe it's N. Anyway, till next time.